Okay, hello everyone. My name's Ian Riley Huber. I'm the Associate Marketing Manager here at Elohi Strategic Advisors, and today I'm joined by Charley Orwig. Charley, welcome. I'm so excited to have you today. To start, can you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your background?
Absolutely, and it's thank you so much for providing the platform as well. I'm excited to be here. Um, I've spent the bulk of my career on the supplier side, whether it was working for a company like Kraft Foods for 14 years, or smaller stints at companies like Smithfield. Uh, I have brought that perspective into the DMA distribution universe. I did spend a little bit of time in the data world as well. So our friends at Data Essential, which I think your audience, if they don't know, should get to know. I spent a couple of years there as well, and I'm a big fan of data-driven marketing.
Amazing. Well, thank you. I kind of want to jump right in. So, for
Yeah, let's
those who
do it.
might not be familiar with DMA, could you give us a brief overview of the organization and kind of its role in the food service industry?
You bet. And we occupy this little bitty narrow niche of the industry. So we were founded almost 37 years ago by a group of regional food service distributors. So they're food service focused, they're family owned, they're privately held, and they're from all parts of the country. And they wanted to be able to get together and compete for national chain business that expanded outside their territories, and they needed an organization that could own the contract and point of contact so that they don't accidentally collude with one another during the process. And so they formed DMA, and they still own DMA today. So currently we have 11 distributor members who participate. So we are owned by the distributors. We serve only multi-unit food service locations. That is mostly chain restaurant brands, but a little bit of non-commercial in the lodging and healthcare sectors as well.
Awesome. Well, you spoke to this a little bit. With your background at brands like Kraft and Smithfield, like you said, you have a unique perspective on both the manufacturer side and the distributor side. So, how has this experience informed your role at DMA?
It's funny. For the longest time, I thought of the distribution community very differently than I do today. If I was working on a brand where we had a pull strategy and we were targeting national accounts, the distributors were just sort of the middleman that we pulled through. However, that I have worked with businesses that looked at more of a push strategy and really courted the distributors and used them as partners. And so now, from the distribution side, I see all of those perspectives, and I see where the distributors can be super helpful to the manufacturing community and to brands. I see the private label opportunities. It's been a really big shift in mindset going from one side of the business to the other, and that the three-legged stool of chain operator, distributor, and supplier. DMA sort of sits in the middle of that. And it's been interesting too, since the pandemic. Our partnerships with the supplier community have grown pretty significantly. So within that little ecosystem, that narrow marketplace I described earlier of just multi-unit, we create a really interesting opportunity for suppliers to be able to reach executives on both the distributor and the chain operator side, and so it can be a really lucrative place for them to play. And we've grown a network of advertising opportunities to the point where in 2020 we were reaching hundreds of people monthly, and we're now reaching thousands of people weekly with various digital communication pieces, and it's kind of changed the game for our relationship with the supplier community.
Put a pin in that. I want to take a step back for a second.
Yeah.
First of all, do I need a distributor? And then second of all, what do they do for me? Just in simple terms.
Oh, absolutely. And if the you in this is a supplier, especially a small manufacturer, you absolutely need a distributor. So the food service go to market matrix is maybe a little unnecessarily complicated. And I say unnecessarily because it seems like there ought to be a different solution, and there really isn't. Um, the last mile of delivery is controlled completely by thousands of distributors out in the various marketplaces. And so the national players and those large regional players that we partner with, um, they're really critical to reaching not only chains, but more importantly, I think to most of the supplier community in reaching those independent restaurants. It is just next to impossible for a supplier to be able to make that last mile happen without a distributor partner. And so having a business model that knows that, understands that, and incentivizes the distributor appropriately to be able to sell on their behalf is really important.
So how do I even go about getting a distributor?
But that's sort of the $64,000 question, and it's a little bit different for every distributor. In most cases, if you're a new supplier, let's say you are a well-known brand in retail, but you only really have a grocery footprint, and you're now looking to expand into away from home. You might have a brand story that could be really compelling to a chain operator or to an independent operator. And if you do, leveraging that with one distributor to help build business locally can be a fantastic way to start. But and I'm a marketing guy, so I'm going to come back to that or to those principles. Generally speaking, do you have you identified a consumer need? Do you have a product that satisfies a customer need? In other words, can you save operators money? Can you save them time? Can you save them resources? If you do, you're going to find an interested and potentially willing distributor partner to help you grow into a space. But starting with one is a great way to prove out that model and then be able to sell into others.
Absolutely. We talk about it all the time here at Elohi. You first have to recognize the problem that you're going to solve for the operator. If you don't have that, you're not going to have success anywhere. You shouldn't even try to get a distributor. You shouldn't go from retail to food service. You got to know the problem first.
And there's suppliers, and I was guilty of this myself back in the day. Suppliers can have a bit of an internal sort of bias, if you will. So I worked on the Oreo brand just long enough to be dangerous. And I remember thinking, this is the number one cookie brand on the planet. There is no sell-in. If you want Oreo, you have to come to Kraft Foods at the time. And you still needed a story for the operator. Yes, that brand was going to help draw traffic. Yes, that brand was going to help draw interest. But you needed an operator story that explained that with data and explained it in a way that either grew their traffic, grew their check average, or saved them time or money somehow.
Exactly. So obviously Oreos are not a trend, but I do want to talk about trends because the food service landscape is just really ever changing. And I want to know, what are some of the biggest trends that you're seeing right now that may be impacting how food service distributors are operating, or maybe even how the manufacturers should operate?
I think it's helpful to kind of break that into two pieces. Let's talk about the distributor perspective first. Things like labor challenges, the increasing cost of not only recruiting and retaining labor, but related trends like driver shortages, those kinds of things. 2 or 3 years ago, those were everything. Like they were the top 5 problems that or challenges that distributors were dealing with. Those have leveled out a little bit. They are still challenges, but certainly not what they were before. So we'll pile that on the challenge side. One of the other trends that's somewhat related to that is automation and technology. So as labor becomes more and more expensive, are there ways to automate warehouses? Are there ways to automate and bring AI as an example into the decision-making process? All of those things, automation and technology are continuing to be a focus for distributors. And then the more recent trend that distributors are dealing with, and the industry as a whole, but where we're getting a lot more questions in the last 3 to 4 months than we got in the last 3 to 4 years, is around the regulatory environment. And that could be something like California's SB 68 bill, the ADDIE Act. That's big steps were taken last week, and others are being taken this week. And you might think, why does one bill in one state have industry implications? Because right at the end of that, it says, oh, by the way, if you operate 20 or more restaurants across the country and one of them is in California, you're going to have to comply as a chain. So
read the fine print.
Yeah, right. So the multi-unit community is really looking closely at this, because it means declaring a whole bunch of new things around allergens, both on menus and making sure you have accurate information from all of your supplier community. And while most of the larger national suppliers won't have any issues making sure that exists, for those smaller suppliers, it's something you need to be definitely prepared for as a trend coming in. And if you have special capabilities in that regard, or your packaging already is compliant in a specific way, make that clear to your distributor prospects so that they know.
Absolutely. And I mean, all of this takes resources, regardless of who you are. If you're small, big, it takes resources. So what are some of the most pressing challenges that food service chain operators are facing today? You mentioned a few of them, but particularly in areas like labor, inflation, and supply chain volatility, because we're seeing that a lot today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, so if you relate the challenges that distributors and operators, especially chain operators, share, it's around that cost of labor. It's around openness to trends in automation, all of those things. And I don't think either of those is going away anytime soon. But the biggest challenge that operators are facing is declining traffic. And as consumers get more and more pressed, earlier in the year, it was tariff-driven inflation, or the belief that tariffs were driving inflation. Now it has become interest rates, and are interest rates driving inflation? All of those things, those perceived cost pressures, are causing consumers to change their behavior pretty significantly when it comes to dining out. And so whether the trend is breakfast going from QSR trading down into C-stores. I say trading down, meaning that's sort of the perception. There are some really wonderful C-store breakfast items out there. So no harm, no foul, hopefully, on that. But making sure that those households that are under that $100,000 a year threshold, and it's more than 50% of the country, that's the place where, or that's the segment of the population where traffic is declining the most rapidly, and where price value is one of the biggest players. So going back to your original question, so the trend around declining traffic and which demographics are participating in away from home consumption, that is not a trend that's going away anytime soon. I talked a bit about labor. some of the labor issues that operators are seeing are a little bit more geographic in nature or geographically focused. Um, and when we talk about various segments and the impact that some of these cost pressures have had, QSRs have taken more price relative to various indexes than have, say, casual dining. And so that consumers have noticed. And so, chains like Chili's are absolutely crushing it. They have not taken price as much as their counterparts in either fast casual or casual. And so that's showing up in traffic trends. But they are also still part of a really bifurcated universe of brands where there are some doing really well and there are some doing really poorly, and those in the middle tend to fall into those camps rather than hanging out in the middle.
Right. So I guess as the supplier, to pick from that, you really need to know who you're selling to, because if they're, say, God forbid, COVID happens again tomorrow or something like that. Who are you selling to, and are they going to be impacted? And do you have your business strategy in line to where you can pivot? And that's where a distributor comes in too.
Absolutely. The distributor, not only do they own that last mile in terms of delivery of groceries, but they understand that last mile in their various regions. And so being able to tap into that is hugely important. And thinking about who they sell to, and then who that restaurant sells to. The multi-layer there is really, really important. So if they are selling to a fine dining operator, the odds are that that's a higher income customer that's looking for a different type of value relative to that particular region. I do want to say one thing though around one of the trends. And if you watch any webinar from any of the big data players these days, there's a lot of time given to the concept of LTOs as traffic drivers, new items as traffic drivers, and chains especially really want to capitalize on this idea of limited time offers or new items as a way to bring a new audience in or their same audience in more frequently.
Hey, even Chick-fil-A does it.
and who would have thought?
Right.
But so that's an interesting place where a trend in the marketplace affects operator and distributor very, very differently. So as restaurants say, we've got to drive traffic, we need new excitement, let's look at a new item. The manufacturer community says, okay, we've got a whole bunch of innovation we'd like to share. Look at this portfolio of brands or products. And having said that, the distributor community looks at that and says, look, we don't have room in the warehouse for yet another item, especially if it's only going to hang out for 90 days. And so that is where distributor and operator collaboration is so important. If the operator can come forward and say, these are, this is the LTO schedule we'd like to follow. How can you best help us, distributor partner? They might be able to find ways to meet all of those needs and objectives without going outside of the portfolio they already have available in their particular warehouse. And if you are a supplier that occupies one of those slots in a warehouse, giving distributors the information about alternative use strategies and other things is a great way to potentially get new use or new application out of an existing item.
So this takes us back. I do want to talk about retail versus food service a little bit, and kind of my 2 cents is the biggest difference in my eyes is when you're a supplier and you're in retail, people care about your brand name, what your product says, what the packaging looks like. In food service, there's a little bit of that, but you're not selling your brand name. You're selling the product.
Some cases you are. If it's a front of house item, if it's an item where you're able to menu the brand, um, you know, Heinz ketchup, Oreo, like there are a number of A1 steak sauce used to be a giant one.
Yeah.
And yes, I just keep hitting that Kraft portfolio over and over again. It's where it's it's where my history is. So apologies for that, but. You're correct. It's front of house versus back of house. And if you're a back of house brand, uh, it may not matter that you have brand strength in retail, as you point out. Can it be levered? Can it give you an opportunity as a point of difference? Absolutely, and you should definitely talk about that. But don't assume that brand strength in the grocery channel means brand strength in the food service channel.
So what's your advice for players that either are in retail and want to get into food service, or really any supplier who wants to get into food service?
Yeah, so the first thing would be, do not assume that the business model is the same. In fact, assume the model is going to be strange, different, weird, whatever adjective you'd like to apply, because it's a really, really different go-to-market strategy. Find business owners or executives that have experience in that area. Find brokers and other middlemen that have experience in that area. There are a number of places, and for sure, lean into those distributor partners because they know that market the very best, especially that last mile. So, but no. This isn't just a B2B sale versus a B2C sale. There is still a patron at the end of the buying cycle, the buyer's journey. There is the operator in the middle. Yes, it is really important to make sure that you're solving for their needs. But if you're solving for their needs only and not giving that patron or consumer a reason to go visit their establishment, it's not going to be a long relationship.
Right, exactly. So as we're wrapping up here, can you share a final thought with the audience about the most important thing about manufacturer to distributor relationships? Because they are relationships.
Absolutely. And I think if I asked our distributor partners, and in fact, I just had this conversation with one not all that long ago. They come back to relationships that are transparent and that rely heavily on frequent and open communication. And so I go back to that hypothetical around an LTO strategy. Not holding back information, but oversharing. This is what our strategy is as an operator. This is where we want to go. How can you help us get there, rather than here's what we recommend. Here's what we'd like to do. That same communication with a supplier, between a supplier and a distributor, is insanely helpful. And I realize that a lot of the small suppliers' issues aren't with ongoing communication, it's with starting communication. And so finding a way in, finding a human being on the other side that can help you make that first sales pitch is incredibly important. And it's one of the things that we try to provide at DMA, is that opportunity for exchange, whether at one of our events or outside of one of our events through a digital or virtual format.
Absolutely. Relationship building. It's so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, great. Charley, I've loved having you on today. How can our viewers find you? LinkedIn?
Yes, LinkedIn is a great way to find both me and DMA. So please reach out. I am happy to help, whether it's in the world of food service and distribution, or whether it is if you happen to be in transition and you are looking for connections to find that next role in the CPG world or operator or distributor world. Please reach out on LinkedIn. I'm happy to help.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Excellent. Thank you.